Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Gig Money Podcast. We talk with musicians about the side hustles that they use to fund their musical ambitions. I am Cody.
And I'm Andrew.
And today we're talking about the expectations that music goers have on the performances that they're going to see. Concert performances, that is what we were talking about today. So
tell me about the show last night. How was the show?
The show was good. The show was loud. Okay, so I learned some very important things last night, and it was certain things that I had been aware of for a while, but seeing them in practice was a little bit different because apparently on certain tour packages, and probably a lot more common than I am aware of, and most people are probably aware of, the headliners have stipulations in place that any of the openers are only allowed to use the PA up to a percentage of its capabilities. So the openers last night were only allowed to use 50% of the subs. And that was part of the stipulation put on the contract by the headliner.
Weird.
So you're sitting there and you're watching a show, and of course you're like, this sounds pretty good. These guys are putting on a good show. And then all of a sudden the headliner comes on and you can hear the bass twice as strong, and it makes them sound better.
Amazing. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they're using the subs to its full capability, and it's just another thing to prevent the opening bands from annihilating the headliners. And I think it comes along with certain headliners that are not really too certain about their position in the world. So,
okay,
they don't feel like they can put on an adequate enough show to counteract, whatever opening band they might have on tour with them. They can't outperform everybody. But that's not the point, is it? Are you bringing out openers? I mean, what's the reason there? Just to kill time? Because if you're doing that, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
If you're trying to bring your fans closer to different music that you appreciate, then that's awesome. And you select the openers, and I've seen a lot of that happen too, and that's just amazing. You're just like picking your successors, essentially, the people who are going to rise up and be in your position later
in the
on.
future. Yeah,
exactly. And I was listening to Matt Hafey on his radio program. He said the tide rises all ships. So if you rise the tide, then all of the ships come up, and that means all of the bands come up if you are working to bring the tide up. So why wouldn't you want to do that? Because that helps you, that helps everybody.
Right.
But if you're trying to keep everybody else down and you're trying to keep the subwoofers at 50% of what you actually get, then that's not promoting anything other than yourself. And I feel like that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah. I love it when when bands perform with other bands, and you find new bands that are just fantastic. To me, I think that's incredible. I mean, sure. Have I played with bands before that have been better than my band? Yeah, I have. And did it bother me? No, not really. Not at all. If people like that band so much, that's great. Maybe they'll know that we bring good bands when we go play shows. So more people will show up. I don't know. But I've always thought that it was kind of a joint venture. Is everybody support each other?
Yeah, it totally is. And I think at a certain point, you can kind of understand why, if a lot of tickets are sold, a lot of people come out to a show to see the headliner, which, is most often the case. That's why they are the headliner. They sell the most tickets. That they want it to be great. They want that experience for everybody that bought a ticket to be great. And, the way in which they're doing it is providing a contrast between themselves and the opening bands by making themselves sound louder, which scientifically a lot of people like compute that as sounding better. Like louder sounds better,
Yeah.
especially in a hard rock metal genre.
Right.
You know, it's just more and it's
Right.
better. And that makes sense to me. If people are buying tickets to see the headlining band, then the headlining band needs to bring it, right? But the way it was framed to me last night is that in order to do that, the headlining band was stifling the opening bands, and I don't think that's the way to go about it.
No.
I truly think that that's just a very, very self-involved way of putting on a show, and I think that you are much better served by making everybody sound great and making it an incredible experience from every single aspect.
Now, I did have a band that I didn't really have a whole lot of say for. Sure, I was the vocalist for the band, and everybody kind of thinks that the vocalist has all the say, right? Like they're the leader. Well, I wasn't the leader of the band. I was just the guy that was there who sang. And the drummer that we had at the time had a really awesome sound system. It was like something you would see at any other stage that was a big stage, right? It had those really cool speakers that kind of came down at an angle like this. All of them, there was like 4 or 5 of them, and then a couple of little towers and stuff. And I mean, it was several $1,000s worth of equipment. And the guy had set it up to make us sound really, really good. But when the other bands played, he'd walk over there and press a button that would turn everything flat. So all of the equalizing and everything was completely off. And it would make the other bands not sound as good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had no control over that.
Yep, that's the thing in today's day and age, and even when you're a smaller or even medium level touring band, you have to have somebody who is not on stage to advocate for you in being that if you have somebody who is running sound for you, it's ideal. It's hard to bring like that many people on tour if you can't pay everybody.
Right.
And you definitely want to do that because these people are working hard and doing what they're doing, and your front of house guys are worth their weight in gold if they're doing what they need to do.
Yes.
So for a small level band to bring an extra body on their tiny little bus, which may have 4 or 5 bunks, or it might be a van that has 4 benches, it's very difficult to do. And in addition to pay them to make sure that it's worth their time and effort. But
Yeah.
having that kind of thing, and when you roll into a show and the headliner has got this, they've got control over everything. If you at least have somebody who can run the soundboard and make sure that your band sounds good, maybe if this person can run lights as well, you get a little bit higher up, you can have one guy for each. So makes sure you have a really good sound guy, really good front of house, and a really good lighting director. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to maintain that. It's hard to, because if you don't have anything to pay them other than what merch sales, and if venues are taking a percentage of that, then that's even less that you have at the end of the day. It's just impossible. So like if you're the opening band on tour and you sound crap every single night because you didn't have the money to bring somebody to make you sound good, then it's just crazy. It's really crazy how that works. And yeah, like I said, it was very eye-opening last night to see a lot of that. And it's not necessarily anything that I wasn't aware of because I had experienced a lot of that and seen a lot of that in the past, but it definitely made itself evident from a crowd perspective. Just me being on the outside looking in and just noticing all of these different things. So, yeah.
I was at a concert, and I think it was Attila. But I was back by where they had an opening where they had the soundboard and the light board, right? And so there was a guy back there doing his thing. And I kept watching this guy just like pushing all these buttons and doing all this other kind of stuff. And I noticed what he was doing was he was controlling lights that were on the stage and on the set. And I'm like, wow, like you really do that all by hand, kind of a. I waited until, of course, it was like in between bands. And I was like, hey, are you manually doing lights? And he's like, yeah. I was like, wow. I'm like, so you must know every single song really well. And he's like, yeah, for 3 bands. He's like, I do the lights for all 3 bands. And I'm just like, wow, like that is intense. And he was doing a really good job. You know, it was like when the double bass was going, it was all flashing lights and all types of things. And I was just like, man, that's wild. I thought everybody programmed that stuff.
Yeah, but the thing is, you roll into different venues every single night with different sound systems and different lighting structures, and you have to just learn it and go on the fly and figure it out. And those guys, they are the unsung heroes of the touring world. And that's another thing that became really, really clear to me last night was there was one of the opening bands. As far as I understood, they were touring as part of the tour package, and they had only brought a very, very limited crew. And, the upper level bands will bring a tour manager, an LD, lighting director, and, front of house, somebody who's running the soundboard. You also have like a handful of crew guys backstage who help load on and off. And, if you drop a stick or your water bottle spills over, something crazy like that happens, your wireless pack starts cutting in and out, then there's somebody back there who can like help you assess that situation so you don't have to do it yourself. But smaller bands, they don't have all of that. And I saw last night one guy who was taking care of their merch table, who was taking care of their load on and off stage, and who was taking care of a variety of different things backstage and front of house. And he was by far the hardest working person of the entire night.
Mm-hmm.
And I just grew so much respect because nobody cares about him. He's not on stage. Nobody knows his name, but he's doing everything. And, I made sure to stop by the merch table and leave him a decent tip, just understanding that he is killing it. He is making sure that everything is running smoothly for this band while they focus on the music, they focus on their performance, what have you. And those guys are all backstage. Nobody really knows about them, but they deserve praise.
Yes.
The thing about COVID, the thing about quarantine where touring essentially stopped is these guys were out of jobs just the same as the musicians. But the musicians were able to sit at home and work on music and then, maybe remotely send different tracks and stuff and like continue writing while these guys are sitting at home. The guys that take care of everything on tour, what are they doing?
Yeah.
So, to be honest, I would actually like to reach out to him specifically and ask him to be a guest and see.
That'd be really cool.
I imagine he is a musician in his spare time because, a lot of people who do crew work are. But I just can't imagine all of the insight that he has into everything because he was just one of the hardest working people I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he was just background to everything else that was going on. It was really awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna reach out to him. I'm gonna find him and reach out to him.
You're gonna find him. You're gonna track him down.
I'm gonna find him. I'll track him down. I know the tour dates.
How did your whole Mullet for My Valentine thing go yesterday? That was it's a really good song.
It is a good song. I can't take credit for the song. It is a really good song.
It's you and Miles.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Did you do all the instruments?
Yes, I did. So the story behind that, I'm not sure if you remember. You probably do. But it was Saul, the band Saul, back in 2013 or 2014, I believe. So it's been almost 10 years, if not 10 years. and they were just a small, kind of independent band at the time, and they were coming through Salt Lake City. And Yancey, who I would like to have on the podcast as well to talk about different things. He
We love Yancey.
absolutely best guy, and we talked a lot about him, but he Yancey made sure that they had a show in Salt Lake City, and he was doing everything that he could to make sure that it was a profitable show and there was a good crowd there, and just going out of his way to take care of a band that was smaller but touring and trying to cut their teeth and make a name for themselves in the industry. And so Parish Lane, we agreed to do the show because we were just really excited about this band and what they were doing and their sound and everything that was going on there. So we wanted to do the show with them, and we wanted to bring as many people as possible to bring a lot more awareness to what these guys were doing. The problem was the very following weekend we had already booked a show. We didn't want to detract from that show. We didn't want to oversaturate. We didn't want to, say, hey, you should come to this show instead of that show because this show is cool
Right.
and that show is not, and blah, blah, blah. We wanted to bring people out to both of the shows, and we decided we would do that so that they could have a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we worked out that we would make that a thing is that with the Saul show, we learned a set full of cover songs, mostly Bullet for My Valentine. And then at the show, we all donned the most terrible 80s hair pieces and crazy clothing and whatnot. And we marketed ourselves as Mullet for My Valentine. Yeah, we were just trying really, really hard to get people out to that show, and we thought that would be a fun, interesting, mixing things up kind of way to bring people out to a different experience for one night, and then you can catch the regular Parish Lane show the next weekend, and make it an event and make sure these guys got the exposure that they deserved.
Yes,
so that was
being exposed.
There's nothing more fun than exposing yourself or being exposed by others.
Yes.
Dicks. Anyways. So, yeah, that it went moderately well. I mean, it was a good turnout. We had a definitely good time and learned a lot from those guys, just watching them perform and seeing their stage kind of production and how they presented themselves, all the way down to their merch table, which was lit up from the inside and you could see everything, and it was just the coolest thing, and I hadn't seen that before, and it inspired me to kind of do similar things because it just kind of drew people to it. You could see everything that was on sale. You could see various different things. It was lit up in the middle of a dark venue, and you just kind of honed in on that, like, what's this? This is cool. Yeah. And I definitely gained a lot from that experience. But that was it. That was the one thing that Mullet for My Valentine did at the time. And I was just thinking about it as COVID struck. And you know what? I really want to do a cover song. And I decided, out of all of the songs that I wanted to do, I wanted to do Bullet for My Valentine. This is something that I hadn't done in a while. It had been 7 years since that show. Yeah. And then the wheels got turning, I still have a mullet. I still have the mullet that I wore for this particular show. I started recording that and working on that, and it never really went anywhere right away. And then, I started working on other, my original music, which turned into Gray March. And I finally found Miles was able to do vocals on this. That was the only thing that was missing. I had all of the instruments. I had all of the lyrics. I had all the vocal melodies and everything, but I'm a terrible, terrible singer. And I couldn't find anybody who was able to make that come to life. And then Miles, he was in Saul. He does production work on the side, and he does everything. He does all of the instrumentation, drums, bass, guitars, vocals. He's awesome. and he put a post out there, and I was like, I'm going to try him out. And so all of the Gray Marsh stuff ended up with Miles being the vocalist because he just killed it. He's the guy. Like he's dependable. He's reliable. He just absolutely comes out with amazing production with everything that he does. So I know that
he seems like a really nice guy too.
he is the nicest guy. He is so cool to hang out with. And we did the podcast with him, and that was him. He didn't put on any airs or anything like that. That's just Miles, and it was amazing to hang out with him. He's hardworking. He really like puts himself into something, but at the same time, he has a good sense of humor, and he doesn't take himself too seriously. So when I approached him about doing Bullet for my Valentine, he was like, yeah, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. Let's do it. I'll do the vocals. I'll do a video. And I'm like, hey, do you have a mullet wig? And he's like, well, no. I have a cowboy hat, but that's not the same thing. I said, I'll send you one. So next day, he had that blonde mullet wig. And,
nice.
And then we continued working on it from there. And I took all of the tracks. I mixed and mastered everything myself. And it turned out really good. I am super proud of the way that turned out.
Mm-hmm.
And
then,
it's
a really good song.
Put the video together myself. And it was a whole lot of fun. And it's goofy and stupid and whatever. I don't care if people don't like it, or if they do, that's great too. But it was just fun.
I hope you intend on putting a link to your song in this video.
I will.
So that other people
I'll put a link to it.
That's a good idea.
To Mullet for my Valentine.
Riot. It'll be a riot.
Yes. Total riot. Had some other ideas. There's another cover song that I've been working on, which is a little bit different, which features Miles, but he is doing mostly backup vocals, and main vocals are provided by friend Todd's brother, Zach, who is a very phenomenal, among many other things, country artist. Yeah. So that should be interesting.
And a great podcaster.
He is a great podcaster. Mm-hmm. So, I will put a link to Zach's podcast in this episode as well, because it's awesome. That's what I listen to when I'm working, and I re-listen to all of the episodes when I go through whatever's current and just go back to whatever, because they're just very, very entertaining and very fun to listen to, and they cover some pretty interesting topics, true crime and aliens and cryptids and strange stuff and scary stuff, and it's just fun
always interesting things.
Always.
So you're telling a story about how Saul had a cabinet that was lit, right?
It was so lit,
and or their merch table was all lit up, right? So it just reminded me of a joke. So this moth, right, is walking down the street, and then he sees this doctor's office. It's a podiatry office. And he goes in and he sits down, and the doctor's like, well, how can I help you? And he says, I don't know, doc. I'm having a lot of problems with my wife. She's just not happy anymore. I don't know what to do to fill the void that she's missing, and he's like, I don't even want to get in to, me and my daughter's relationship. Just like she's a whole different person. I just don't know how to deal with her. I have no idea, what she likes anymore. She's just grown up so much. And then my son, it's like my son is just, he's hot and he's cold, and you don't know whether he likes you, whether he doesn't like you. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And then I got this brother who just got thrown in jail. And he says, and I can't even find my other brother. I have no idea where he's gone. So I don't know, doc, I got all these problems. And the doctor looks at him and says, this is a podiatry office, right? And he says, yeah. And he says, why'd you come here? He says, the light was on.
Oh. Man, I should be disappointed by the lack of payoff with all of the backstory with that, but it's so great.
So whenever I go to concerts or sometimes big events, it seems like there's somebody around me that usually ends up needing protection. There always seems to be situations like that. I was at a Korn concert, and we were right up front. And I was with our former drummer, David, and we're having a really good time. And there's a guy to the side of me, and he's got one leg. He's on crutches, right? Now we're at the front, like we're on the gate, we're on the barrier, which is a hard place to be sometimes, because when the crowd starts moving and stuff, the people against the barriers are the ones who end up having to take the brunt of all of the force, right? So
and you have nowhere to go. You're squished up against the barricade. That happened
exactly.
at my very, very first concert. So
Yeah,
it's a hard place to be, like you said.
it is. So we're standing there, and his girlfriend like comes over to me, and she's all, "Hey, so I know that things are probably going to get a little crazy. This is where my husband wants to be." No, yeah, it was her husband. Yeah, this is where my husband wants to be. And she says, he's a war veteran. He lost his leg in Iraq. And she says, "Can you please help me? Should he fall, will you help pick him up?" And I was like, "Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely." So during this period of time, I actually had my arm kind of around his arm. So as the crowd is like bumping into us and moving us side to side and doing all types of different things, he could keep his balance. And it wasn't until the encore, when Korn came out and played a few of the encore songs, that he got knocked over. And so I had to help pick him up, and a few other guys behind me ended up helping me pick him up. I didn't think he was going to be that heavy, but I don't know if I've ever picked up a one-legged man before.
That's one thing that I can say is that in a lot of crowds, like I have no idea what it's like for any other genre of music, but if you're going to a metal concert or a rock concert or anything like that, and things get wild in the crowd, somebody falls down, there's always somebody there to pick them right back up.
Always.
And it's just the sense of community there is so amazing. And I imagine that's why most people go to concerts, is because you get that experience and you share it with everybody. And if you fall down, somebody's going to be there to pick you up and get right back onto, rocking out. And that's the coolest thing. I don't think that happens in a lot of other, genres. I don't imagine somebody falling down at a Taylor Swift concert is going to be picked back up. They're probably going to be trampled to fucking death so that the person behind them can get 6 inches closer to Taylor Swift. And it's just,
yes,
it's a little sad, to be honest.
Everybody wants to get 6 inches closer to Taylor Swift.
I would rather be one step closer to the edge at a Linkin Park concert, but yeah. I was saying earlier, my first ever concert, I was right up against the barricade, getting squished against it, and I was like 13 at the time, and I was there to see Metallica, and I had saved up the $80 in order to get a ticket to Metallica, and I was so excited about it. And Godsmack was opening, and Godsmack was awesome. And, they had the full center stage kind of set up and 2 different drum kits. And they had that whole interlude in the middle where they were like dueling drums. And it was awesome.
Got the drum battle going on.
It was one of those things. But I was like 13-year-old, and I was right up against the barricade, and people were pressing right into me. And I was like squished the whole time. The security guard was standing on the other side of the barricade right in front of me, and he checked on me every 5 minutes. Are you okay? You still good? You need water? You good? You anything? I'm like, man, this is the best moment of my life. As I'm being like pressed up against the barricade and squished into oblivion, it was a very depressing experience.
Yeah,
but not depressing at all. It was amazing.
Have you ever seen a show or been to a show where you listened to somebody and went, "Yeah, I'm not that much of a fan anymore"?
Well, yeah, Godsmack. I saw them recently, and that's part of it. But there was just this whole kind of aesthetic that they had, where even in the middle of the set, Sully was saying, "We don't play with any backing tracks, and we don't have any in-ear monitors, and we just go raw and blah 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 blah," as though they were talking shit on pretty much every single other
Every other
band
band.
that played that
Yeah.
day. And I was like, all right. I mean, that's cool. Like 20 years ago when you guys were coming up, and it's cool now that you guys are still like doing your thing. But at the same time, you know, what's wrong with having backing tracks? What's wrong with having a metronome in your ear so that everybody is
Right.
on point at all times? Like you can be really, really tight as a band, and that's cool. At the same time, if you want added extra elements in there, if you want a full symphony orchestra, like unless you're Metallica, you can't afford to bring that many people on tour with you.
Right.
So how about you just have some very well orchestrated backing tracks and just have a metronome in time that you can keep on top of those tracks. I mean, it's music.
Right.
People are coming to experience your performance of the music. That doesn't mean you need to perform every single note, every single sound that happens in the recording. You know, it left a bad taste in my mouth a little bit. You know, I respect where they were coming from with that, but at the same time, there's countless bands that night that took what they were saying. We don't play with backing tracks or click tracks or blah 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 blah, and just blew that out of the water. It was, that was my first time seeing Death Clock live, and I don't know if you're familiar with Death Clock.
Yeah.
But they're the
I've heard 'em.
band from Metalocalypse, and it's fronted by Brendan Small, and it has Todd's good friend Neely Brosh on guitar, the one who borrowed Todd's amplifier the one time opening up. Just playing at Kamikaze's in the Iron Maidens. So she is an amazing, amazing guitar player. And Todd was like honored that he was able to essentially rent out his gear so that she could, play lead guitar for all of these Iron Maiden songs at Kamikaze's.
Yeah.
So, just an amazing band. And then they have the backdrop of all of the Metalocalypse clips in the background as they're playing these songs, performing them live. Like, how would you do that if you were just a really tight band? You wouldn't do that.
Right.
It just doesn't work that way. It wouldn't sync up. It wouldn't be the same experience. Like you say, like, I can't have click tracks in my music. I can't have backing tracks in my music. And then you have like a whole bunch of video effects and, pyrotechnics and bullshit like that. How does that work?
Unless you've got somebody there, like I was saying with the Attila thing, unless you got somebody back there pushing buttons that's familiar with every single song, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
And you can automate that now.
Yeah. And if you could afford to have a person pushing all of those buttons and save you the effort of having a click track, then of course, that would be fantastic. It's so much better having an actual person behind the soundboard, behind the light board, whatever, to control everything and essentially be a silent member of the band that's contributing to the show. But not a lot of people can afford that, especially in this day and age,
Yeah.
And, the guys who do jump into those positions and fulfill the merch guy, whoever's driving, front of house, lighting, crew, backstage, all of those different things, they're definitely worth their weight in gold. But affording that is a completely different thing. Yeah. Taylor Swift can do it, but we can't.
Yeah, yeah. And everybody wants to be 6 inches closer to Taylor Swift. Yeah, so I went and saw a band recently that was probably the crux of that entire situation, which was Falling in Reverse, right? So Falling in Reverse came. There were some people there who were just talking some mad shit about Falling in Reverse. Oh yeah, people are paying money to come and watch, a lip syncing, all this, the garbage that's been spread around all over the internet by, let's just admit, they're just haters, right? People who don't know exactly what they're talking about. They're just regurgitating the garbage that they've been fed. And then Falling in Reverse came out and just nailed it. And I mean, every single musician in that band was incredible. It's just like, okay, this is not, them doing karaoke. They're playing everything, but everything also it's got these bass drops in there. It's got different sounds that are necessary for the band that, obviously, unless there was somebody back there playing them on like keyboard or something, then it couldn't happen. And obviously they're synced to the visuals that's playing in the background. All that stuff takes a laptop. You can't have somebody back there doing that, like popping in the VHS tape. I know they don't use VHS tapes, and then projecting it on the wall, so that it's in time with everything. And I mean, it's a whole production, everybody, they've got a whole thing they do. Cause let's face it, people just aren't happy anymore with just hearing music. I think everybody's just so ADD lately that you've got to be appealed visually. You got to be appealed sonically. You've got to have all these different elements coming in together to keep your focus, to really enjoy something. And you're just like, wow, this is great. If you go and listen to a band who's great as they're playing, that's awesome. But guaranteed they got lights flashing around them.
Yeah. See, the problem is most people don't even recognize it. They kind of get this impression like that was a bad show. They just didn't put on a good show. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times the problem is something that they can't even pinpoint. They don't know.
No.
It's lights. It's not always lights, but a lot of the time, if you just have like white lights on you while you're playing and nothing is happening, that's boring as hell. And watching a band play, it's like, oh man, they're trying their best, but they suck. But if they had the lighting production that, the headliner would have, that band would totally blow you away and you would be a fan immediately just based on lights. None of their performance changes. None of their music changes. None of their sound changes, anything like that. It's just lighting, and it brings so much energy. And people have no idea.
Yeah.
They just show up, expect to be entertained. And if they are, great. If they're not, then your band's done. And like you said, falling in reverse is the exact opposite of that spectrum, where everything is pretty much controlled from that one service. There's so many different things happening at the same time, and they're all perfectly quantized in time with the music, with the visuals, with everything that's happening. And, you can do that with people, but it would take an army of people to do the things that one computer could do. And,
and
at that point, like everything that they're doing visually with lighting, everything is almost, it should be secondary to them just performing the music, but people don't think about it that way. They think about it in terms of they're just fluffing everything with, all of this computerized stuff. And it just, it lessens the experience for some people and enhances the experience for everybody else who's open to it.
Right. What's like with Avenged Sevenfold when they were playing, they had these cool like flame silhouettes around them up on the screens. And, that's a big part of the production as well, is these gigantic screens that the bands have to the sides of them, to behind them. Those aren't controlled by a person back there popping in the VHS. I'm going to keep saying VHS because I think it's hilarious, but
Betamax.
Yeah.
Somebody's got some Betamax.
Back there with the slideshow clicker, click. Yeah. So, but those, that just adds a really cool element. I remember watching that at first and I'm going, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Is that a person? Like, it just looks kind of like fuzz to me. And then all of a sudden you start seeing this silhouette and you're like, oh, that's the guitar player. Oh, that's, the singer. Oh, that's that. And it just adds a whole cool element to it. Mm-hmm. That's not controlled by a person. That's a digital, or that's a visual effect of some sort. And that's got to be controlled by a computer. So a lot of people have the wrong opinion or the wrong information about what a backing track actually is. Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of people understand what happens with the majority of bands who are out there playing, because, I mean, let's be honest. Amateurs have set lists, right? You got your set list of things, but when you're in a professional kind of a band, what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and next, because there's a flow.
Mhm.
And I bet you there's a computer generated something in the background giving you a click, giving you a prompt. It's like, okay, the song is about to start. Because songs that just start up, you don't, turn around to your band like you would in a practice and be like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, go, right? There's something there happening. It's what you're not hearing that is different.
Yeah. And a lot of artists actually play on that. They play on the idea that they have, the entire plan in their earpiece,
Yeah.
guiding them, and the audience doesn't hear any of that. And it makes their transitions into different songs, into different parts of their performance seamless.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nothing more awkward than when a band stops playing and just kind of looks at each other and waits for the next song to start. And
right.
there's
it's like, no, you're supposed
nothing,
to start.
there's
No,
like very, very obvious seams there, and it draws people away from the actual performance, and causes them to question the professionality of the band itself, because you're watching that like, do these guys know what they're doing? Like, is their first time performing on stage? They can't just start another song after they're done.
Right.
And that definitely plays into it. But it's like, computerizing things in a way that helps you perform better. Why would you not want to take advantage of that?
Right. Yep. Precisely.
It just, there are so many things that are timed out, especially when you bring larger production elements into it, like pyrotechnics. And, that becomes a safety issue. Like, people love it. Like, there's fire on stage. It's the coolest thing ever. And it brings so much to it brings so much to the performance, because it just makes that suspense, that intensity, that much more,
Mm-hmm.
because there's actual fire on stage.
Yeah.
But if you time that incorrectly, you turn into a fucking charred hot dog and you're done.
Yeah.
You can't play anymore. And that's it.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
It's very real. I don't think a lot of people really consider that.
When I was watching Avenged Sevenfold and they had their big fireballs and stuff going off, you could feel the heat. Granted, I was in the pit, so, you're really close.
Mhm.
But at that point in time, I didn't even think about what are the band people feeling? Because if we're feeling the heat from out here, that's got to be really hot at their backs, or even their fronts or whatever. I don't know. You got to give it to people who can go off of different pyrotechnics like that and just play. It'd be something I would have to get used to.
That's true. And different production elements like that, from the stage perspective, it adds to the amount of intensity, especially because you have all of the lighting on you that nobody else is experiencing, and it can be overwhelmingly warm. So you're sweating.
Yes.
And then the intensity that you're physically putting into a performance to add to the music, your body's working, your heart's pumping, and you're sweating because of that too. Then, pyrotechnics come off and you singe some fucking eyebrow hair off because you're a little bit too far on stage right or stage left or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. And for somebody to criticize the fact that you have a laptop backstage controlling a lot of that, it's just ridiculous.
Right. And it's like, it's safer that way, obviously, because what's going to happen is going to happen on cue and on point, because it's designed that way.
So on that note, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you very much. So make sure you, like and subscribe and check out different resources we have. We're on TikTok. So we'll put a link in that in the description. And appreciate you guys listening. Until next time, I'm Cody.
And I'm Andrew.
We'll see you guys next time.
So then,